Good morning, everyone. If you can just let us know that you can hear us, we are going to begin our February monthly Safety Council meetings. We're excited to have you all here with us today. Hopefully you are having a great week and a great start to your 2021. We're going to go ahead and get started so that we can give our guest speaker enough time to speak today and still get you guys out at a reasonable time. So thank you for being a part of our meeting today, and I'm going to turn it over to Will, our BWC rep. Will, we're excited to have you back. We haven't seen you in a while, so I'm going to turn it over to you for any updates that you might have.
All right. Thanks, Angie. So this is the Bureau's monthly update for February, and you guys know me, I just missed a couple of months of meetings to go over to West Virginia and visit family, but I'm back. So coming up webinar wise, we already had the, well, looks like 2 of them have passed already, but we do have accident analysis on March 16th, 11 to 12. And we've kind of slowed down on our webinar schedule, but there are some still available. Training class-wise, some of the virtual classes we're doing, lockout tagout on February 23rd, and we've got hazard communication on the 25th. Both of those are 1 to 4:30. And then we have the electrical safety NFPA 70E. It's actually a full day class, but we've broken it up over 2 mornings, the 25th, 9:30 to 1, and the 26th, 9:30 to 1. So we don't keep anybody in front of their computer all day. Just a reminder, I'm sure you've heard about it before, but our Safety Congress is coming up next month, March 10th and 11th. Registration is available right now at ohiosafetycongress.com, and you can check out the schedule over the 2 days there and go ahead and register for whichever you'd like to attend. We've also put out a hazard communication micro video training series. There are 4 short videos on different parts of the hazard communication standard. They're only 3 to 5 minutes long, and there is a quiz for each one of them, so they are perfect for training your employees or as refresher training. Now, yesterday we had a webinar on reducing COVID-19 transmission through HVAC, or heating, ventilation, and air conditioning improvements in conjunction with the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission. It covered step-by-step approach to assess and manage indoor air quality and reduce the spread of the virus, and information on some of our indoor air quality assistance program. And I know this was yesterday, but the webinar will repeat during the Ohio Safety Congress on, I believe it's March 10th. So if you missed it, you can attend then. And the indoor air quality assistance program is designed for nursing homes, senior centers, and so forth to help with improving the air quality there due to the pandemic. Now, from the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, otherwise known as NIOSH, in the Centers for Disease Control, they also have a list of some interventions to address ventilation in buildings and help reduce the concentration of the virus particles. And for our fire service friends, there are a lot of information on the hazards with rapid filling of compressed breathing air cylinders and best practices for that for refilling your SCBAs. And finally, from our friends at the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, they have a fact sheet, gives guidance on identifying hazards in the workplace for managers during a walk around. There's also an alert on how to keep farm workers safe when they're being transported in vehicles, and it's available in both English and Spanish. And there are a lot of public service announcement videos on COVID-19, which it's slowing down, but we're still not out of it yet. So might be a good time to share those with your workforce. And that is it for the update. I'd encourage everybody to sign up for Safety Congress.
Thank you, Will, for those updates. And we try, I think usually all the updates that you guys send us, we do put on our Safety Council website page. You can go to that page from our chamber website, scroll down to the bottom of the front page, you'll see Safety Council, and it'll have all that information on it. So we are ready to turn it over to our guest speaker, Brenda from Osha, and she's going to be talking to us today more about bloodborne pathogen training. So I don't really have anything other than that. We are very grateful that you're here, Brenda, to speak with us today. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. As I bring this shared screen up, I just want to clarify a couple things. I'm actually with Mid-America OSHA Education Center here that's housed under ABC. So I wanted to make sure that I clarified, I do not personally work for OSHA. So, you know, that's kind of a something you have to say for sure. Before I start, I have a long background and it's exciting and boring all at the same time. But I pulled off some statistics when I was looking at this when Wendy, you know, let me know that she would like for me to do this. And one of the most mind-boggling that I found is on January 8th, 2021, OSHA had issued over 300 citations to the amount of 3.9 million, mentioning the word COVID. Bloodborne pathogen was in there too. That's what led me to it. But they also said in this article, and it come right straight from the news releases, that there were 294 total inspections that culminated into citations. There were 300 inspections, but only 294 culminated to citations. And between the 25th of December and the 31st of December, they issued 81,000 plus with the word COVID in the writing. Most of them are respiratory issues. Seems like they're settling for a particular amount of money, somewhere ranging, no matter what they write, to from $9,400 to $11,000. So just keep that in mind. Even though we do not really have a COVID citing process, they are finding ways under the general duty to cite that. And the first to get cited was in the Cleveland area, out of the Cleveland office, and it was 3 nursing homes that failed to have respiratory programs, training, and fit testing. So I'll answer any questions anybody has. I cannot see comments or chat room. I don't know if it's because I'm limited to one screen, but I'll just let you know that. So if anybody wants to have a say, raise your hand or jump in. So we're going to talk about the bloodborne pathogens. That's not, 1910.1030. Our objective here is what should we be doing and how should we be caring that we have a potential for bloodborne pathogens? What does the standard say and what does the general duty call for? What's the employer's responsibility? What's the strategies for preventing the infection from spreading, and how do we control the spreading? What are emerging threats? Dealing with exposure. And then we'll do some conclusions and we'll have some time for question and answers. So bloodborne pathogen is a biohazard. It's infectious microorganisms in the human blood or potentially infectious material coming from humans. The most notable is hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and then HIV, autoimmune immune deficiency. Hepatitis A has made a resurgence, and it's mostly been spread in the work setting where food is prepared. And it's caused a few closings of restaurants, but that seems to be able to get under control with care of the patient or the victim, and then also sanitation. Infectious person may carry the virus for years without having any symptoms, and it cannot live outside the body for very long. There's no real cure. There's treatment and there's care, but there's no real cure. It's transmitted through shared needles, unprotected sex, needle sticks from an infected source, splashing of blood, and OPIM, other potential infectious material, or passed from the mother to the fetus. Much of the symptoms are flu-like, and we have so many flu-like symptoms now that if you had flu-like symptoms, more than likely everyone's going to raise up their nose and say, "Oh, it's COVID." You could have a splinter and somebody will say, "Oh, it's COVID." But the symptoms are headache, sore throat, fatigue, fever, muscle aches, and pains. I believe you don't lose your sense of smell or taste with this. 35,000 people are infected annually. That's a lot of folks. So there is a way to check and stay ahead of the curve when it comes to these infections. And of course, our best source is CDC and NIOSH. OSHA does have that standard that they expect us to follow. But remember, OSHA is the what to do, not the how to do it. There's a nice little picture. Sharing spreads through sharing needles, needle sticks, unprotected sex, surgery. Risk of dialysis, transfusion, patients can live on the surface for a week. That's a pretty sight there. Symptoms may appear 1 to 4 months after exposure. Therefore, you could be exposing others without even realizing it. And then the symptoms occur, abdomen pain, the dark urine, and possibly jaundice. Jaundice involves your liver. You'll have a yellowing of the skin, or more specifically, a yellowing of the whites of the eyes. Vaccines available, but they don't cure. The vaccines that you would get there's some preventative, there's some treatment after you've been exposed. The last time I checked the dollar amounts, the treatment for hepatitis C was about $20 a month, or $20,000 a month. And that would be your part. If you don't have any insurance, it may be more than that. 3,000 new cases of acute per year. 12,000 chronic. And the difference, is acute shows up fast, very painful. Chronic goes over time and may not be discovered for a little while. Hepatitis B. Here is commonly what would happen to your eyes. You may not have any symptoms for years because it does have a latency period, and other lifestyle choices may have an effect on it, how quickly it appears. So to flu-like symptoms, jaundice, easy bleeding, dark urine, itchy skin, and can live on the surface for days. Again, needles, sharing, needle sticks, transfusion, unprotected sex, surgery, and blood from other potential infectious material. No vaccine available currently. The new drugs on the market offer what they call a cure, and that's in parentheses because it's questionable. Approximately 2,000 acute cases per year and 160 chronic, and that's hepatitis C. There's a certain age group that it has been laying dormant for years and years and years. And as a person goes forward with medical treatment, the question is often, we need to do a hepatitis C test on you before we do this procedure, however minor it is, because it does lay dormant for many years. Why should I care about bloodborne pathogens? If you become infected, you are a risk. Osha estimates 5 million are at risk for exposure. Some illnesses are fatal. Many require a lifetime of very, very, very expensive treatments. And it can spread to friends and family. That'd be something to talk about. Sorry, I gave you that. It can be physically, mentally, and financially rigorous and tormenting. So why should I care? As an employer, it impacts your bottom line. Your insurance rates, fines and penalties from OSHA for not caring for your workforce. Also, if the Bureau of Workers' Comp gets in there to make restitution to the employees or the family members, there may be some serious outcomes to that. And then there's always in Ohio a high probability of civil lawsuits and criminal. Boy, does it kill your morale. The workforce that knows someone has any of those viruses or bloodborne pathogens, that does change the way people act. It may slow down the productivity. It may also add to the occurrences of absenteeism because unhappy people don't come to work. It is incorporated by reference. Federal and state laws say that the safety standard of the bloodborne pathogen to the public sector. And the code, administrative code, says that we as employers cannot expose folks in our general industry or our construction arenas to these. So it is important to know, to find out. And then we also have HR rules that we have to follow. HIPAA may play into this. There's a whole bunch of things that may play into this. There is a special record keeping procedure for needle sticks. Again, it's in 1910, 1030. It became effective in March 1992, and it was brought in as an emergency temporary standard. It applies to all occupational exposures. It can incorporate that general duty clause also. And I believe that under this administration, the general duty clause will be used more heavily going forward than it has been in the past. That's my understanding from some of the professional writings. PPE is always a consideration. Hazard communication, respiratory program, they're all part of your exposure control program. I looked up reasonably anticipated, and it says someone by their job tasks would be reasonably anticipated to be exposed. I'll tell you a story. I had a couple fellows in class a few years ago, both of them kind of outspoken. I won't say they had bad tempers, they were outspoken. And they got into a full-blown verbal argument in the classroom to the point where I said, let's just call down Cincinnati office and just ask them. The question had come up that a company had had an amputation in January, February, and March, and the same fella that was a volunteer firefighter that already was vaccinated was the one that cleaned it up. So the question between the two gentlemen they were arguing about, is it reasonably anticipated that he in his work setting in the manufacturing would be reasonably anticipated to be exposed? When I got the Cincinnati office on the phone, I got Kevin McCafferty, if anybody knows him. And the answer from him is, it is never reasonably anticipated that a company would have 3 amputations in 3 months. So that person was not on the reasonably anticipated exposure list. Keep in mind, for the most part, it's very easy for an employer to throw PPE at something, but keep in mind there's more to it than that for bloodborne pathogens. Each employer having an employees that is occupationally exposed as defined in the paragraph, and I explain reasonably anticipated, shall establish a written exposure control plan designed to eliminate or minimize employee exposures. Some occupations. Reasonably anticipated skin, eye, mucous membranes, perinatal contact with blood or other potentially infectious material that may result in the performance of the employee's job duties. Duties like direct patient care, phlebotomy laboratories, environmental labs, waste management, others like morticians, doctors, dentists, wastewater operators, waste collection folks. All of those are on the list of potentially. That list, the only list I found that was potential was from NIOSH. I didn't find one in OSHA. The number one strategy, of course, is follow the hierarchy of controls, and engineering means you make a change to the environment, and that way you reduce the hazards. Controlled access in and out, ventilation systems, automated systems, robotic systems. Those are engineering controls. But where we really live, we live in the work practices. And because we live in that area, it's highly contingent on the individuals working within an environment where exposure could occur to follow the procedures. And the procedures as universal precaution assume that all bloodborne pathogens, all blood, all secretions from the body are harmful and contaminated. And that's how we're supposed to proceed. Administrative controls are what I call the softer side. It's where you rotate schedules, you have training, you have signs, you write programs, you have discipline. PPE falls in that, just under that. I'm not a proponent of throwing PPE at everything without giving all these other opportunities a choice to be a strategy. PPE is highly reliant on every person in that supply chain, from the person that does the assessment to decide what is needed, to the person that actually procures it, and then the person that distributes it and ensures that employees are trained on it, how to put it on, how to take it off when it's reached its maximum life, what to do with it when it's disposed of, and how to get some more. And then along that entire line, you might somewhere along the line have a cost comptroller or a bean counter, for a bad word, that says, oh, no, that gloves cost too much. We can get that glove over here for 3 cents cheaper, without actually doing the assessment, will that other glove that's 3 cents cheaper really work? So what is the definition of, and how do you determine if someone is exposed? If a job classification in which an employee of those jobs are classified to have occupational exposure, then they have to be in the exposure control program and plan. If the job classification in which some employees have occupational exposure, then they are. I forgot to throw in that police officers and firefighters also are among that group of reasonably anticipated, especially now since we have a whole bunch of the Narcan business going on. All task procedures where exposure can occur or may occur, those folks should be on the list. And each employer has to make their own list based on their reasonable exposure to their folks. The schedule and method of implementation. What are you going to do to comply? How are you going to make that happen? Do you have hepatitis B vaccination pre or post? And do you make that available? And does everyone understand how it's available? How do you communicate the hazards to employees? Then who's going to keep your records and how are they going to be kept? And who's going to have privy to see those records? The procedures for evaluating. If you work in a, say, American Red Cross and you draw blood, there's a reasonable anticipated exposure there. There's no question. Immediate available for exposed employees have confidential medical evaluation follow-up. Only the medical arena can determine how badly that exposure is and the course of action for that individual exposed employee. More than likely, the documented route of entry is going to be critical. And then it's annually reviewed. Part of the annual review is to ensure that you've got your exposure control plan and your program and your strategies aligned with where you want to go in the future, that it's not misaligned or you've missed some marks. Universal precautions. That's where you believe everything's potentially infectious. All body fluids. Provided to all employees who have a risk of exposure at no cost upon employment, then annually thereafter. And any kind of appointments or any kind of doctor visits or assessments, they have to be done at a time that's convenient for the worker. Can't make them at a time that's inconvenient. Some of the minimums: train everyone about what's in that program in 1910-1030. And then there's a outline of what's expected in a program at G2VII. Common sense rules. First aid, use gloves, have little contact, none if possible, with blood or bodily fluids. If it turns out that you suspect that you might have, you really need to wash your hands with antibacterial after any contact. No soap. If you have no soap, use hand sanitizer, but keep in mind, the manufacturers of the sanitizer say on there that it is temporary and you should seek out water and soap. And it's not necessarily the hot water or the cold water, it's the friction of moving your hands together with the soap. So keep that in mind. Sometimes overheated water will drive whatever materials on your hands deeper into your skin. Housekeeping. After an accident, the entire area must be cleaned with the EPA approved disinfectant. And you have to literally look on the container and see that it says EPA approved disinfectant. Clean equipment must be disinfected. So if you have a spill, you must clean up the spill first and then do the disinfectant. Wear gloves, aprons, goggles if appropriate. Restrict access to the area, especially during a cleanup activity. And be assured that you do not want people carrying it out on their feet, on their hands, or on their clothes to contaminate another part of your workplace. The amputations I spoke of earlier really did happen. And the person that got the tip of their finger cut off, the first one, he ran through the entire production floor all the way into the break room and into the men's locker room, which that whole corridor had to be contained and decontaminated. It was a big deal. Use disposable towels and then dispose of them properly. Sharps containers. This is some more strategies. On these sharps, also consider the cleanup of broken glass. And what would you do if you found used syringes in the trash? For the lack of not knowing what to do with them, some folks will just bend the needle over and throw them in the trash, but that is not the correct way. And part of the workplace strategy is ensure that you've trained them that is not the way. And then beware of overstuffed or leaking sharps containers. Encourage folks to manage their own use of syringes. Like, don't pick up broken glass, use a broom and a dustpan. Dispose of glass and sharps responsibly. Laundry, bloody and contaminated linens or sharp objects, they do require special care. This one always gets me. It gets me because I know OSHA writes lots of citations in labs where they have a sign on the door of a refrigerator that says biohazards, and then somebody's lunch is in the fridge or a beverage. So they have to be segregated and separated. Before you eat, apply makeup. I would suggest before you go to the restroom, you wash your hands before you go to the restroom. I do that today because of uncertainty of COVID, range, what it can do. You take off your protective clothing, wash your hands before you eat, before you drink, smoke, dip, chew, vape, handling contact lenses, applying lip balm or any kind of cosmetics. Don't put your hands in your mouth or rub your eyes without having washed your hands and removed your protective clothing. I think that last one there, don't put your hands near your mouth and rub your eyes, is very difficult for most people. Frequent hand washing is the best defense. We're washing our hands so much now that they're becoming raw. I don't know about y'all, but I'm getting raw patches on them from washing them. Can't keep them softened enough. Will talked about COVID. There's just a few little things here that I want to touch on with COVID. We have, these numbers are probably 2 weeks old. We might even have more than this now because the numbers are changing. There's a lot of questionability if the numbers are actually true. But regardless of if they're true, they're over exaggerated or under, COVID-19 is a real issue. It's mutating, It's starting to have new strains. So for now, it's airborne droplets expelled from someone's mouth or nose. And we were talking before we went on and opened up the whole room about people wearing their masks in their homes. And maybe they should, but maybe they have a loved one that's had it or has it now. But there's some unreasonable things that we have taken on as a society due to the pandemic. 7 trillion in costs for the United States thus far. It has mutated. It's mutated at least 3 times now. Osha does have a topic page. They basically follow the CDC recommendations. The state of Ohio has recommendations. Will had spoke about the BWC has topic pages and training sessions. And Ohio Health also has dedicated information for this. There was a couple other things that I pulled off of the website. I know we're about to the end here. Changes coming. These were published 3 or 4 or 5 times. I've seen them from different people. And it seems to be all of those, let's call them legal eagles that keep a watch and keep their finger on the pulse of what's going on in our administration when it comes to safety. Under this administration, number one, they're going to create an emergency temporary standard. That we knew. Number two, they're going to double the inspectors because some are retiring and there's not enough to do the work that needs to be done. The administration is going to restore the advisory committees, the 2 of them, one for construction, one for general industry. However, the safety professionals they're choosing are closely tied to organized labor. The other thing that this administration is going to do that may shake our world up a little bit is go back to the original electronic reporting rule for record keeping. This is if there's absence of legal challenges. That's why it didn't go forward before, some legal challenges. They also said they're going to increase their general duty citation for COVID-19. And it's if the employer does not take reasonable steps to prevent or abate the hazard. And there's 4 things that they're going to look for. The employer failed to keep the workplace free of hazards, which are causing employees to be exposed. The hazard was recognized. The hazard was caused or likely caused a death or serious physical harm. There was a feasible and useful method to correct the hazard. That's what's on the horizon for this administration. Okay, I'll go back to this PowerPoint here. Best control is prevention. Hepatitis vaccine series are made available, especially if you're known, your profession is known to have potential exposure. Personnel can refuse that vaccination. If they do refuse it, there's a document that you must ask them to sign. If they decide tomorrow or later on today that they want to get it, you have to provide it. This is an emerging issue for COVID-19. There are some groups, some working settings are saying that you must get a COVID-19 vaccination. We'll see how that, goes forward, since part of the reason why it's not being pushed as much now as it might be in the future is there is a shortage for the second shot in the series. Exposure. Wash the site where you're exposed. Report that to the supervisor. Seek immediate medical help. The sooner post exposure prophylaxis is administered, the better chances of recovery. And care must happen immediately, and it has to be confidential and at no cost to the employee. There are follow-ups, and there may be several follow-ups, and the series after post-exposure may go on for a year, maybe two, with just periodic checks, dependent upon how serious the exposure was. They want to know the route of entry. How do they identify you as a person? And they're going to probably do some blood collection on you just to check, I would imagine. And they're going to test for HBV and HIV. And that care, like I said, may go on for several months or maybe even years. There may also be some counseling due to the change in one's status and coping with those changes. The company itself is supposed to evaluate the reported illness with what limited knowledge they're going to have. There is contact tracing, but I understand it is not as prevalent now as it was, due partly to manpower and availability, but I do know there's contract tracing still going on. No matter what exposure you've had or whatever is going on that you need to make a file about an employee's status, it's not really finished until you do the paperwork. Your medical records for exposure at work is kept for a duration of the employment plus 30 years. I would encourage employees that if you have an exposure and you must seek out medical treatment, those documents you get from that physician, no matter how menial, should be kept in a safe place, because much of the symptoms may not show up for years, 15, 20, 30, and you will not be able to go back in time and say it was that one day, that one place, and I was doing that one thing. But if you have those documents from the physician, it might help you narrow it down. You must keep your training records for 3 years from the date of the training as it relates to bloodborne pathogens. Any questions? If we have no questions, I'll turn it back over to Angie.
Thank you so much, Brenda, for speaking today and that great information. It's kind of a nice refresher for sure to make sure that everyone is up to date and remembers all of the safety training. So we really do appreciate that. Thank you for taking your time today to share that with us. Also too, Brenda, if you want to email me that presentation, I can add it to our Safety Council website page under today's topic. That way, if anyone wants to reference back to it, or if somebody couldn't be here today that wants to look over it, they'll have that information to use. So whenever you get a chance, if you just want to email it to me, and I'll get it put up on the website. Will, did you have any other updates or information?
Nothing here, just encourage everybody to sign up for Safety Congress.
Yes, for sure. And then I had, and I can't find it now, next month's topic. And it's also, the topics are on our website as well. But next month, our Safety Council meeting will be on March 19th. And it is going to be prevention of insect-borne diseases with the Scherzinger Pest Control, Mike Wedding, I think is his last name. will be speaking for us on that. So we'll learn about all the various insects that are carrying diseases. So that'll be interesting to hear for sure. So one quick note, again, if you're not getting our emails that we send out, let me know or check your spam. I know that some are having problems with your firewall with your emails. And if you're not, because it is through a third-party email distribution list. So if you have not received an email from me, you should have gotten one earlier this week for a reminder of Safety Council. So if you didn't get that, check your spam. If you updated your email address and you've not, let me know. We want to be sure that you guys are getting all of our emails. And I've been trying to go back and check a lot of things. So I just want to be sure to remind you guys to always let us know if you're not getting those emails from us. So if there's not anything, any questions, any suggestions for us before we go? All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of your Friday and enjoy the weekend. And we will see you all back March 19th. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.